Hello, my name is Kirsten Murphy, and I'm here speaking for the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council. This is a video for our members, especially our members of the program committee, and for anyone in the public that would like to know more about the progress the council made during its first year of its 5-year state plan. At our last council meeting, members asked me for more information about whether we accomplished the things that we said we would do in the work plan that we council members really wrote for year one of our 5-year plan. How did we do on that work plan? So I have prepared a written report, which is available on our website or simply by contacting me, Kirsten Murphy at vermont.gov. You're welcome to a copy of it. But I thought it would also be easier for people to take in the information in a video where I move through the same information using a PowerPoint. I'm going to provide 3 separate videos, one for our first goal area, which has to do with empowering individuals, a second video for our goals 2 and 3, which have to do with gaps in services, and then with work we're doing to address the needs of people with high support needs. And then finally, a third video for our goal area 4, which is focused on advocacy and systems change. These videos are going to be pretty homemade. I may stumble over my words a little bit, but I'm going to simply post the first take on each of these, so I hope you can bear with me. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and begin with goal area 1. So welcome to this video regarding the 5-year state plan progress report for year 1. Goal area 1 has to do with empowering people, self-advocates, and family members. All Vermonters with developmental disabilities and their family caregivers are empowered to make personally meaningful and culturally appropriate choices about their services, education, guardianship status, healthcare, living situation, and relationships. That's what our council members adopted as goal area 1. As you can see, it spans a lot of different parts of an individual's life. Each of our goals has a series of objectives under that goal. Objective 1.1 for our state plan is that the council will support self-advocates and family members to become leaders in the disability rights movement. We think of this as our leadership goal. And in our work plan, we said that we would do 3 things. We would continue to plan and support the annual Vermont Leadership Training Series. Secondly, we would host an annual summer summit for graduates of the Leadership Series and others as well. And then third, we would support peers to teach other self-advocates about leadership and advocacy. That's what we promised to do in our work plan. How did we do? So here is how we rate progress in each of our objectives. We break the year down into the 4 seasons. Those also happen to be quarters of the year, so a 3-month periods. And then we use a bar graph to show some of the highlights of what we did. And these are color coded. So the color codes are pretty important. Let me run through what that is. Yellow is when we're planning something. We're just in the planning stage. Blue is when we're actively engaging in that particular set of activities that we wrote about in our work plan. Pink means we've accomplished the activities that were in our work plan. And in most cases, that means we're more or less done with that set of activities. White means we haven't even started. And then there is a green color that you don't see on this particular set of bar graphs, but has to do with when a activity in the work plan was set aside because it wasn't the logical thing to do anymore, or we decided to move the activity from year 1 into year 2. Usually because of staff capacity, there's 3 of us, there's only so many things we can take on. And sometimes also because circumstances were just such that it wasn't time to do those activities. So how did we do with the 3, and then there's a 4th added, the 3 things that we said we would do around our leadership series? Remember, 1 is running our leadership series. That's solidly in the blue area. Last winter, we began planning for it. We tried to hold it in the summer. That was undersubscribed, so we moved it to the fall, which is when we normally hold it. And by the end of the year 1, we were recruiting, and we had finished the contracting. And in fact, now we're in year 2 and we're hosting a very successful leadership series. Remember, activity 2 was holding a summer event for our leadership graduates. So when we got to the spring, we began planning for that. And then in the summer, we held a summit where a speaker, Zoe, I'm afraid I don't remember her last name, but Zoe from the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network spoke about plain language. And it was well attended by our leadership grads and by others interested in plain language. So that summit was held. It turns pink on the graph, and we are done with that particular activity. Remember, the 3rd activity had to do with peers teaching peers. We accomplished this by giving a grant to Green Mountain Self-Advocates and supporting their work as they train and support their local self-advocacy chapters. It's a big grant. It has a lot of different activities in it, but one of the important activities is training, is peers teaching peers. So did we do this? Yes, we planned through writing a contract or grant with our friends at Green Mountain Self-Advocates. Then that project, it turns blue because we're actively engaged in it through GMSA, continues, and then the grant ended and the activities were in fact accomplished by our grantee. So yes, we accomplished that one as well. We added a new activity under this area, which had to do with providing some support to GMSA in the form of a SEEDS grant. SEEDS is a program for new and innovative small grants. A SEEDS grant to GMSA to help them plan around some training about person-centered planning. And we awarded that, it was a very small grant, $2,500. We awarded that in the fall. We didn't hear, there was really no activity by the grantee. And in the end, the grant did not get used. And so the money was returned to the council. So that actually should have been colored green. But that was not accomplished, but not because, not for anything that we didn't do, but it just wasn't the right time. And GMSA said, thanks, but we're going to have to do this later. Here's the money back because the year has ended. All right. So that's one objective out of the 5 in goal area 1. In goal area 2, our second objective is our self-advocacy objective. This is where the council will support the long-term sustainability of the self-advocacy movement in Vermont. So this is our support for the self-advocacy movement. And in Vermont, we are really fortunate that we have a freestanding, self-governing self-advocacy organization. And a lot of state self-advocacy is really led by a subcommittee of the council maybe, or by a group that isn't incorporated and is much more informal. But we have a very robust and independent self-advocacy movement in Vermont. So it makes sense for our council to accomplish supporting self-advocacy through a grant through Green Mountain Self-Advocates. So our activities, there were two. Provide grant support to a statewide self-advocacy organization, which would be, because there is only one, Green Mountain Self-Advocacy Advocates, to add new local groups as needed, conduct board training, host at least one youth summit, and reach out to culturally diverse communities. Those are all the kinds of activities that we wrote into the grant. And the investment you see is noted here. It was $42,000. So that's a piece of their grant. It's not the whole grant. Then a second activity that we anticipated would be providing a sponsorship to support GMSA's very successful statewide conference, Voices and Choices, which has been running for many years. How'd we do? Well, in the area of GMSA's grant in the fall, we planned and executed the grant, the work as I just described, as different things that they would be doing, like a youth summit and supporting their local chapters. Those things happened all along the way. And then in the summer, at the very, well, it's really the end of September, the grant ended quite successfully. So yes, we accomplished that. We had thought when we were planning that we would be supporting Voices and Choices. We waited to see if the conference would be happening in person or virtually, because of course, COVID has continued to be a challenge for large gatherings. And in fact, they elected to not hold an in-person Voices and Choices event during what is our year one. So the funds were not needed from us. So that's just noted that that was not accomplished, not because of any laziness or on anyone's part, but just because the circumstances were such that that didn't make sense. I see I've jumped ahead now to the third objective in goal area 1, and this has to do with guardianship and with the work that the council does to support alternatives to full court-ordered guardianship. The objective says, working with community partners, the council will promote a range of alternatives to full guardianship, including supported decision-making. As many of you know, supported decision-making is an arrangement where an individual remains their own guardian and retains those rights and identifies usually a group of people who will help that individual with important decisions in their life. That can be very formal in a written plan, or it can be less formal in the way that somebody might rely on family and friends, really in the way that most of us do, for help with important decisions. So here are some of the activities that we said that we would do. This one takes a couple of pages. There are 5 activities. We would train and sustain the work of 4 youth ambassadors who are prepared to talk with peers about alternatives to full guardianship. That's a project in which we invested $5,000 in a contract. And the Youth Ambassador Program was really part of a larger multi-state effort in partnership with the Center for Public Representation in Massachusetts, which has been promoting supported decision-making. And our 4 youth ambassadors did a wonderful job. They were part of a class with youth ambassadors from Georgia and Wisconsin, and they learned a lot about guardianship and then developed their own individual projects around guardianship issues and supported decision-making. So that was what that activity had to do with. Oh, I apologize, that jumped ahead. Second, we would identify policy barriers to supported decision-making and other alternatives to guardianship. And we did that work because the council participates with other organizations in a work group that meets every month to talk about how to reduce reliance in Vermont on court-ordered guardianship and increase the use of supported decision-making and other alternatives to guardianship. We said we would coordinate technical assistance and create plans to address policy barriers, including legislative recognition of supported decision-making. That again had to do with meeting with this group of other organizations where we talked about, well, what is it that gets in the way in Vermont of having supported decision-making? Do we need legislation? Do we need to change some rules? Are there literally forms that the courts or schools use where we could change the wording on the form as a way to promote people thinking about an alternative to guardianship? So that was work that we did together. It turned out that legislation was not what the group chose to move forward with this year, but that's that activity area was something in our work plan. So we have to kind of say, well, how do we do on that? Okay. The fourth activity was that we would develop and implement a marketing campaign, a promotion campaign that raised up supported decision-making and other alternatives. So what could we use just by the power of influential media, good talking points, a strong visual, some things that we could really put out there to youth and get them thinking about, hey, maybe I wanna talk more to my family about whether I should have to go to court and have my rights taken away, essentially. So that was a marketing campaign. And then the fifth activity would be providing information sessions for groups, including families, medical professionals, developmental disability staff, school special educators, transition service teams, all kinds of different audiences where we might provide information about guardianship and alternatives. How did we do? This is a little bit of a busy slide because we had 5 activities. So you'll remember the first had to do with our youth ambassadors, which we accomplished and is completed. The second had to do with looking into the policy issues and barriers that might be getting in the way, something we planned for, selected strategies, and are continuing to work on with that group of multiple organizations, our friends in legal aid and the Disability Law Project, Green Mountain Self Advocates, the Office of Public Guardian, the Division of Developmental Disability Services, and Vermont Family Network. I'm sure I'm leaving out a few members, but it's a big group. The third activity was policy. What policy changes could we undertake to promote supported decision-making? And we really started that before year 1 began and continued to do that throughout the year. So check, accomplished. The fourth one had to do with a public awareness campaign. We did plan for that by putting out a request for proposals. We found a great consultant to help us with that, contracted with her, and the campaign is currently in development now with that multi-organizational group overseeing it. So that's started and will continue into year 2. And then training. We did some, we did a little bit of training for, I recall folks from developmental disability agencies. So in that sense, we probably could have given us a little bit of a check mark there. We did also issue a $10,000 grant for a complex training that we wanted to hold over a weekend for individuals and their family members, and even possibly somebody's other natural support provider, a friend, their uncle, whatever. So somebody in the individual's life that would help them with decisions. We were going to hold this weekend long conference, and during the summer, it was not well subscribed. We didn't have as many people sign up for it as we thought we would. And so the grant was returned back to the DD Council to be continued. We hope in the future to plan this type of event, but it didn't seem like either the summer was the wrong time or COVID was causing people to not sign up. But that particular activity did not happen. All right. The fourth objective, this has to do with peers, helping peers around their community-based supports. Peers teaching peers. So the council will ensure that trained peers are available to support those who need help with their home and community-based services and other supports. So those activities were 3: support Green Mountain Self-Advocates in sponsoring an advanced level training for peers who are prepared to become paid support providers. I probably worded this activity a little bit incorrectly. There was a hope that we would support some training. There was also a hope that we would support some planning process at GMSA around how to establish more formally paid peers who might have jobs at agencies around helping their peers in their person-centered planning process and troubleshooting around their services. So that was a training activity, but there was also a planning component that didn't get reflected very well in the work plan. The second activity would be continued to fund, and this is in a completely different area where peers help peers, and that's in the area of special education. The council has had a longstanding investment, longstanding meaning 5 years at least, of supporting families to get advanced training through the Council on Parent Attorneys and Advocates, or COPA, a national organization that provides very high-level training around special education advocacy and special education rights. So we would continue to fund Vermont parents to attend both introductory and advanced training through this organization, COPA. Another way that we would help parent peers help their peers. And then third activity has to do with a hope that we would begin to take the 25 or so people that have gone through COPA training and convene them, bring them together for some kind of mutual support and maybe ongoing training. How'd we do with those 3 activities? The first activity, supporting GMSA with planning and possibly training. We did award them, it was a very small grant. It was $2,500. This grant was awarded. There really wasn't any activity that occurred, so these probably should have been white. And then the grant did not end up getting used, largely because the timing wasn't right. Nothing wrong with that. It was a hope for, and it probably will happen in the future. But the grant was returned to us because it wasn't the right time to use it. Then COPA training, we provided a very small number of scholarships and also supported some Vermonters to attend COPA's annual conference in Boston, where they get a ton of training. And that project is continuing at a very small investment level, under less than $2,500. And then the third had to do with convening the graduates of COPA. And that is a hope for that did not happen during this year. And we have begun in the very end, the summer, we began planning with the Disability Law Project for that to happen. So the only activity that happened there was planning. Number 5, and the last objective in goal area 1 is our focus on empowering families of adults who receive developmental services with more information, with concrete, vetted, reliable information, which currently they have to glean from a lot of different places. We have a member that would often talk about, why is it a secret? Why is it hard for me to find out? what services my son is entitled to. So the council will support and connect family caregivers of adults with developmental disabilities. So support through information and also through connecting parents to parents, because while we have fantastic, robust program at Family Network around connecting families of children and youth, that falls off some for adults. That's not really the focus of Family Network for caregivers of adults. And so families of adults have long expressed the desire that they have more support and peer-to-peer connection. The activities were 2. I see a misnumbering there. We would initiate the development of an independent, curated, that means checked, looked at, carefully thought through website designed to provide comprehensive information about adult services, and create an editorial board for that website. So this is a long-held dream of many of the families that have been council members, and it's right there in our 5-year plan as an activity. And then probably through this website, establish a safe online, there are some of these, but establish a safe online means for family caregivers of adults to contact one another. So just another opportunity for families to connect with each other, possibly electronically. Right now, it's just hard for families to learn about who are the other families that are supporting someone with a developmental disability, possibly living at home and in their 20s, for example. So creating a little bit more of that connection. This is a big project, and we didn't really make much progress on it in year 1, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. That just means it's going to take a while. So we started putting out some requests for proposals around building a website. We realized we didn't want to do that with an outside vendor. We wanted to do it in-house. We have the staff capacity to do that. We took the steps of meeting with state officials to make sure that we weren't breaking any rules by creating an independent website, because we are technically a branch of state government. And that work is continuing. It's far from over. And then because we are still in the very beginning stages of this website development, we're behind in terms of, building any kind of networking opportunity that's electronic. So that activity will be moved into year 2. So not accomplished. Those are the 5 objectives under goal 1. And this tape will end, and I invite you to watch the 2nd and 3rd tape in this series to find out more about the progress we made in year 1 on our 5-year plan. Thank you.